The Story of the Vain Princess, an ancient historical tale from Ireland. It is said that there once was a great king who had a very beautiful daughter, but she was arrogant and vain. Many kings and princes sought her hand in marriage, but she rejected them all. When her father grew tired of her pride, he decided to invite all the kings, princes, and noblemen he knew, giving her one final chance to choose a husband. The next morning, they all gathered at the palace, standing in a line as the princess walked past them, inspecting each one. She said to the fat one, "I won't marry you, you elephant." To the tall and thin one, she said, "I won't marry you, you reed." To the pale-faced man, she said, "I won't marry you, you ghost." She paused a little longer in front of the last one, who was a handsome young man without any obvious flaws except for his large brown mustache. She gave him a brief compliment and then continued saying, "Even so, I won't marry you, you brown bear." Thus, all her father's efforts were in vain, and he grew furious. He declared, "I will marry you to the first man who asks for your hand, even if he is a beggar, as punishment for your arrogance." The next morning, a beggar knocked on their door, telling the king he loved his daughter and wanted to marry her. The king welcomed the beggar, called the priest, who came immediately, and married the princess to the poor beggar. The princess cried and protested, but her father paid no attention. He told the beggar, "Take your wife with you and leave at once. I don't want to see either of you again." The beggar set off with his angry bride, who was only calmed by her husband's soft voice and gentle manner. As they passed through a forest, she asked him, "Whose forest is this?" He replied, "It belongs to the king with the large brown mustache." He gave her the same answer when she asked about the plains, the cornfields, and finally a magnificent city they passed through. She thought to herself, "If only I hadn't been foolish, that king could have been my husband now." Eventually, they arrived at a simple cottage, and she asked in despair, "Why are we here?" He replied, "This is my house, and now it's yours too." She began to cry, but hunger and exhaustion forced her to enter without further protest. There was no table or fire in the cottage, so she had to help her husband gather wood, light the stove, cook dinner, and wash the dishes. The next day, her clothes became dirty, and she had no choice but to wear a sackcloth dress. Every day, the princess cleaned and tidied the place, and when she finished all the housework, she spun the wheel. The princess never rested, and her soft hands became rough from all the hard work. Days passed, and her husband told her, "You will work as a cook in the palace kitchen. The head cook is my friend, and I have asked him to take you in." The poor princess had to swallow her pride once again, but her new job kept her busy all the time. In her second week of service, a grand celebration was held for the king's wedding to a bride whose identity was still unknown. That evening, after finishing her work, she sat with the servants to watch the celebration. Suddenly, her husband appeared, dressed in simple clothes. He took her hand, pulled her into the ballroom, and began dancing with her to the classical music. The princess was deeply embarrassed, as everyone looked at her with disgust. Her husband then whispered, "Don't you recognize me, my dear? I am the king with the large brown mustache. I shaved off the mustache and disguised myself as a beggar. I married you, and all of this was arranged with your father to cure you of your pride and vanity." The princess didn't know what to say or how to feel, ashamed, scared, or happy, but love was the strongest emotion at that moment. She cried like a child and rested her head on her husband's chest. Soon after, she was dressed in luxurious bridal attire, and her husband wore his finest clothes. Her father and mother arrived to join in the celebration. The guests didn't fully understand what had happened between the king and the servant girl, but the sight of the princess, now a radiant bride, made them forget everything. They all indulged in the most magnificent wedding, the likes of which had never been seen before and would never be matched again. Here's a good conclusion for your video, including a call to action and mentioning that it's your first video. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more captivating tales from history and folklore, please don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more content. This is my first video, and your support means a lot to me as I continue to bring you more exciting stories. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.